Good day, beloveds, and welcome to this edition of Let's Talk Social Work. I am Danny, your host of Natural Ally D, social worker and aromatherapist, where I marry the two to help our overall quality of life and well being. And today we have a special guest, Regina. And you want to introduce yourself, Regina?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Regina and I've been a social worker for over 20 years. I also have a YouTube channel and my YouTube channel is Regina Michelle and I just like to talk about work-life balance, but I will do a lot of topics especially concerning with politics and just things just that's going on in the world.
All right. I do love that about your channel, Miss Regina. So today, ladies and gentlemen, is a little bit different. I would normally talk about aromatherapy and all things aromatherapy and related, but I also talk about topics that I am passionate about. And social work is definitely a passion of mine. Me being a 20, ooh, I think I may have a beat by a couple of years. I'm at 20, 25 plus, Miss Regina.
Awesome.
In social work, and I enjoy talking about it. Haven't talked about it as much on this channel, but today we're going to change that and appeal to our those who want to know about social work, how we got started in social work, and those who are already in the field, right? To join the conversation about social work, and if this appeals to you, certainly like and share with fellow colleagues, and we're going to get started. So I talked about on my channel ways how I got started and what prompted me to do what I do here on YouTube. And so I'm gonna have you start. I'm gonna reiterate what I have said, but I want to get your perspective, Miss Regina. What inspired you to pursue a career in social work where you are in your state, and let them know where you are?
Okay, I am here in Alabama and I went to social work because I wanted to help people that was less fortunate. I grew up in a low income community as people like to relate to as the hood, and people would always, I could see the look in people's eyes when they see you when you come from a low income, and there's a stigma with people with low income that they're bad or that they're gonna steal. It's just a bad stigma with people who's in low income housing. So I wanted to make a difference and help people that grew up like me. And so when I went to college and I learned about social work, I thought that was something that I would want to do. And I've been doing it now for over 20 years.
Oh wow. So it's definitely, I imagine we'll get into that later. It's definitely been a journey for sure. I'm sure we have some stories that we could
All right.
share, yep, share back and forth, right?
Yes. Mhm. We
Oh goodness. And so yeah, and it's like you, I was inspired um by my upbringing. I always feel like social work found me in a way. I say that because had I not had the challenges I had growing up, particularly with my health, right? I mentioned on my channel a few times that my health challenges led me to be where I am. I believe so. And going in and out of ER when I was younger with conditions, health conditions, particularly eczema, asthma, more so for asthma, but going to the doctor for eczema, and, they're giving you some cream and telling you to go home and have a nice day, right? And
mm,
then asthma, you know, fast forward, went to college, had an episode, and went to the university health center, and there was a male nurse, and he told me, you need to get a allergy test. I had no idea what that was. Allergy test. Nobody told my family about potentially me being allergic to a bunch of stuff, right? Or that I should avoid. And so, me being I was a poor college student, so I had a free allergy test at the university health center, and the rest is history. And from that, because I was still in school, I still ate what I ate because I couldn't afford to eat anything else.
mm, mhm.
And then later on, life progressed and I got a job working in my local city housing department and realized I needed to learn more about, well, my health, first of all, and those that I was serving. So, got an opportunity. I jumped ship, went to state government where I am now and have had my career. And based on the opportunity there, but they help you with tuition, I was able to go back and further my education. And I have been running since. A couple with my trying to increase my health, it just sort of interweaved each other, and I enjoy what I'm doing. I feel like I've been blessed to go in different places and spaces and positions that have allowed me to show up and be, provide the talents and skills that I have in order to serve those in my community. So it's more interweaving the story. We can get in that a little bit later, but that's the big picture of how I got to where I am today. And I enjoy it. I have my days. Like I said, we probably could share, swap some stories. But at
Right.
the end of the day, my soul really does do good when you hear from other people who appreciate what you've done, even those the ones who don't, because I learn from those as well. Because you can't help everybody, even if you're in social work, right?
Right.
So, but yeah, that's how I got started and where I am today. So, Regina, can you like share like maybe a story or something rememberable that you can recall that help you to shape how you approach the way you do your work today, or just been a social worker, period?
It's how I approach my work. Well, I always try to, I don't, how can I say this? I feel like everybody is worthy of assistance, and I always try to give my all to everybody that I serve. I always try to bring good energy and just try to assist them with a positive attitude. I try not to, put everybody in the same class. I think that because, sometimes people think that people are trying to work the system. I try to
Mm-hmm.
get all of that out of my head and just try to meet the client's needs with a positive attitude.
Right. And I think those who are listening who are social workers, if you don't know a social worker, there are many types of different types of social workers, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we run the gamut from working with individuals to families. You could be in corporate social work, you could be in medical social work. There are so many different types of social work backgrounds. And that being said, that what you just mentioned could be that's a skill that's needed no matter where you are as a social worker, right?
Right.
You know, was
No
there
matter
any,
no matter
huh?
how that person is dressed or how they look, I just always try to treat them with kindness and just show compassion.
Right, absolutely. And I take particular attention to, you know, when you're working with the populations, sometimes you have opportunity to speak with them. Well, I'll just speak for me in person or more so virtually now. But I try to pay particular attention to what the person is not saying, right?
Right.
Well, you can hear in their voice that their frustration. You could hear that this I'm probably the 10th person that they've talked to and they haven't gotten a a solution or been pointed in the right direction, or just want to be they want to feel heard. And what you said resonated with me about treating each individual as they come, right?
Right.
Because you don't know for which um circumstance everybody's coming. You're in their life just for a snippet of time, maybe, and to help them as best you can the way you can. And I always say I have a saying on my job: the only difference between me and my customers and those that I serve is in the length of the table we're sitting at. Okay. But
Right.
for mercy and grace, I could be on the other side.
That is so true.
So I walk humbly when I say that, and I have some sayings above my desk that reminds me of that all the time. Even before I pick up the phone, to speak to somebody, let me do a self check. How am I feeling? How am I responding to this person? What do they need? At the time. So I try to do some self evaluation because I know one thing. The last thing I ever want is somebody to be um by the time they hang up with me, Regina, they be like, "Oh, she was something else."
And you
I would not.
definitely, you definitely want to be that way to somebody that's in need. And and here, like at some agencies like food stamps,
Uh-huh.
some of the food stamp workers can have a very nasty attitude with the people that come in for
Yeah.
s-
Mhm.
and I think
Absolutely.
that's very hurtful to the person that's in need. So, like you were saying, always try to show up in the best way you can. Self evaluation. Treat people like you want to be treated.
Yes.
Mhm.
And having said that I do work with colleagues who do administer food benefits in my state, and you're right. I'll be the first to admit I don't sugarcoat nothing. You
Right.
know, I I when people call me, and they normally call in my office when they're have a concern about state services and what have you. And I'll be the first to admit, I might not say it out loud, but
Mhm.
on the other end, all of our customers can't be right. I can't be wrong, rather. So when I hear concern about someone being nasty or someone, not being the most professional, one of the first things I do is I apologize, and I didn't have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But it sets the tone for the conversation. It lets them know I hear you. I understand. No, it was not nice if that was said because there's always two sides to the story. So let's be real, right?
Right.
But at that particular time, they don't need any badgering or anything like that. They just need to be heard. And so I apologize, and that sets the tone. And how can I help you today? You know, what can I try and do and try to calm all that down? Because again, my goal is, to try and assist you as best I can and not leave you feeling worse off from talking to me
Right.
than than when you first started. Like, whoa, oh wow. But huh?
I agree with you.
And that leads me to ask about, okay, so having said that, what we said about sometimes colleagues might not be their best, what are some of like the biggest challenges you think social workers, particularly where you are, might be facing? Because it's a stressful job. Keep it real. For those social workers out there who are on the front line, it can be a very stressful and draining job when you're working with people every day, just working in the public and who have needs. And quiet as it kept, you have your own needs. So
That's right.
what do you feel like is the biggest challenges where you are at, Regina?
Well, here in Alabama, it's just not enough resources.
Okay.
Just with resources with the elderly, housing is horrible. It's waiting list, and the application process
Hmm.
makes it hard for people to receive assistance. So
Hmm.
I have a lot of women, they need housing, and Section 8 here, I don't know how it is where you are, but it opens only like every 3 years.
Hmm.
They don't inform the public. You have to find out through the newspaper.
Hmm.
A lot of
Hmm.
people don't have access to the newspaper. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
but with that type of information,
Right.
it's just
Right.
odd. It's very rural here in some parts of Alabama. So the transportation
Hmm.
or medical appointments can be very hard. Getting patients that live out in rural areas.
Hmm.
Oh, it's vast. and we can't keep a lot of social workers don't stay. We have a hard time
Oh,
keeping social workers.
wow.
Mm.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it's similar in ways here about the job. If you come in, I remember when I first started, I thought I was gonna be Susie social worker. That
Yeah.
changed real quick, okay? I was like, "Ooh, to keep my mental and emotional stamina up, I can't be Susie social worker, but I'm gonna be the best I can with treating the people that I can." But yes, when you were talking about resources, that can be a challenge. Helping with some simple things like help with utility bills, like for example, right now, one of the things that they're doing is you can only have one what they call a state emergency relief, and in a year, in a fiscal year, from October to October. So you can only be approved for one, and once you've approved for that one, you have to go to outside resources. And with
Oh.
those, yeah, and so that came down this year, and actually, I think it was happening. No, earlier last year, it was we had ran out of monies, and so they had to stop the application. Well, they didn't stop the application process, where they said, after this certain date, we are no longer we're no longer able to approve, and you have to wait until I think it was October 1st or November 1st. I don't want to misspeak, but one of those 2 months where they were going to be accepting applications again. So
Yeah.
now we've started the cycle again, and you only get one. So you can only be approved right now for one heat application and one electric. So if you
Wow.
have more than one bill in a fiscal year, you have to wait. You'll be denied and you'll be referred to outside resources. So stuff like that. And I don't know, here in Michigan, they have where, if you have a child, you have cash assistance, you only get it
Hmm.
for 48 months, you know. Um, and it's something. And you were talking about what I find is that in us too, our jobs, at least where I am, are not marked as, how can I put it, social work positions. In other words, their titles are not social work per se. Yes,
Yeah.
there are some social workers here, but the position description does not say or indicate that they have to be a social worker. So you have a number and gamut of people who are working in positions and they're expecting them to be like social workers, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
I understand.
But
Are you talking about with licensing? Like
yeah,
have
or well, just working in positions where you're handing out like concrete needs like cash or medical or food stamps
mm-hmm.
or child care. Up here, those positions are not called social work positions.
Oh,
Their
yeah.
their title is not such, nor do you have to have a degree in
Oh,
social work. There, the minimum requirement is that the last I looked was that you had to have at least 60 hours, 60 credit hours in any field associated with whatever the position description said. Does
that's
that
what.
make a difference? Yes, to me, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on who you hiring and what level of care and how can I put it? Um, understanding or knowledgeable resource, if I can say it that way, that you
Yeah.
have when you serve the public when you have a social work background.
Yes, and then you have to be aware of ethics, social work ethics, and
Yes.
how to
Yeah.
people. We have a code that we follow,
Thank you. Absolutely.
and when
Absolutely.
right, and when you don't have that degree, license, you just a lot of people they don't follow that code.
Yes. And um, I'm so glad that you brought that up because just that point alone, I hear customers who call and say, my social worker, but and I have to quickly correct them, not
Mm-hmm.
to scold, not to, belittle or, anything like that. But I want them to understand real quickly. The people you're talking to might have a social work degree, but the positions for which the people are serving you from are not social work positions. They're not required to be licensed, okay?
Right.
And they're not getting paid as a social worker. The messaging out there, I think, might be from other entities that they are, but they're not. There's,
Right.
and it makes a difference. And I share that with them. I'm saying that to say your level of expectation could be different if you feel like you're talking to a social worker as opposed to a caseworker.
That's right. I
Y-
agree.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, I feel, and I'm just getting off my soapbox with this one, that the positions, if you want them to be social worker, require social work degrees and pay them as such.
Yes, because they definitely don't want to pay you.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. And but for the type of work that we do, it requires that because in social work they want you to do more with less, right?
They do.
And they require you to be a little creative, in that. And so, but if you want them to do all the things and still have that level of concern and to listen to the customer, because they don't judge them. I'm not saying judge. They don't how can I put it, rate them, so to speak, based on the quality of care. It's based on the quantity. Let's keep it real. How
Right.
many statistics? How many people were
Yes.
you able to serve? How many food stamps are you able to open without them going over? Because we have something called a standard of promptness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so they rate the employees based on their numbers. They don't rate them on how much time did you spend with Miss So and so trying to help her because she was an older adult, or
Yeah.
how much time. They don't give you kudos for that, or even show up in your paycheck. Okay, so
Right.
so you got to keep it moving sometimes, and it can be quite curt, and it can be quite you know feel cold, but at the end of the day, depending on who you're talking to, it just might be just that.
Right. They make it more political.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
You got the
definitely
word.
understand that. It's
Yeah.
all about the numbers and not about the people.
Yes.
We can't
Yes.
really, you can't really pour into people when you're moving at a fast pace and trying to meet a goal of numbers.
Yeah.
And they should not put numbers in front of people. You know, I have to deal with that every day.
I know, right? And
Hmm.
you touched on the subject when you're talking about people feel like people are stealing or not entitled to it or whatever the case might be. And I have this thing about policing food stamps, just for example.
Hmm.
Eating having a basic right is to be able to eat, okay?
Right.
And we have our systems to try and do the checks and balances, making sure that nobody's getting more or less a penny more than they're supposed to, so to speak. But I just have issue with that. I just like that should be a basic need. I could care less about police and food stamps, but that's another story because I have been in that position, and I tell you what, in hindsight, it did not feel good. Once I realized, like, okay, this ain't
Right.
it. Oh gosh. Which brings me to talking about state specific policies and resources and our ability to serve the communities and how do we adapt to those. You mentioned about lack of resources and the social workers, we try to, we try to pull a rabbit out of a hat as best we can with the resources they have. How has it been for you?
Our resources, we don't have a whole lot. And we had a wonderful resource that used to provide a lot of people with like assistance with rent and
Uh-huh.
food and clothing, but the director, she started stealing from the company. So
Oops.
that, yes, and it shut down. So we have to collaborate with a lot of churches.
Oh.
And the churches are very helpful because they have the food pantries and
Mm.
things like that. So we collaborate with them to get
Okay.
more resources for the public.
Mm.
Hmm.
Wow. Now that's something. Well, us being a government entity, it's not much, but they do have what they call a fraud department where again they audit our cases or what have you. So
Ugh.
for people listening out there and families who don't understand about Department of Health and Human Services does, the cases are audited, and so the staff are limited to the policies and the procedures that are before them. Do they always get it right? No. Does
Mm,
the department always get it right? No. And on the other end, does our public, you know, uh, get it right or wrong sometimes? It happens. And unfortunately, that's where in situations where um, they do something called recoupment to get those benefits back.
right.
Right. So that it happens, and but the fact that a single person could actually take money from the department, I'm like, wow. In our department, that's definitely the a quick walk out the door. You're not gonna be approving and doing all sorts of stuff without them finding out, because if two plus two don't equal four, they're coming for you. Okay.
Right. They will. Those audits make you so nervous.
Yes, they can, and and that's another thing. I try to inform my clients or customers that you need to know the rules of the game to know whether or not you want to play,
Right.
if that makes sense. Because there are some policies and procedures you might not understand, you might not agree with, you might not want to be a part of, you might feel like it's intrusive, some of the questions and the things that they ask you to provide. And I get it. I
Mm,
get it because you probably know when I say they all up in your business, they all up in your business.
yes, they
I
are.
mean, from everything from your assets you own in the bank to how many people in your household to how much money you making, whether it's earned or unearned. It it could be a bit much. You're like, well, why in the world do you need to know all of this?
It's
It's
an
like, honey,
interrogation.
yes. It's like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, you need to know the rules of the game. Then you can decide whether or not you want to play. So most
Right.
definitely. Oh wow. So, switching gears a little bit, this mentioned how this career can be challenging. You can have something like a passion fatigue. You
Oh,
could just be simply burnt out, right?
right.
So, how do you handle your self-care to maintain your mental health, like while you're out here serving?
I try to maintain my mental health as best as I can, especially at work. You know how sometimes people like to try to work through their lunch and stuff and stay in
Mhm.
the building and stuff. I make sure I leave out of that building. I go sit in my car, I go take a walk. And when I'm away from the job, I'm always doing something for me, whether
All
that's
right.
getting my hair done or a pedicure or something.
Okay.
Buy me something nice. I always try to do that for myself. And I've also learned over the years that I cannot save the world.
Mm,
So I would be the type of person, I would not call in. I would not take days off. I don't know what I was trying to prove.
I
I
got you.
just was I think it's just a learned behavior, just not to take off.
Yep.
But now I'm always taking off to take care of myself because I have a daughter, I have a husband, and my time I prefer spending time with them. So and just having my mental health right because I can't be good for them if I don't take care of myself.
Ooh, we speak. Say that again. I know that's right. I was just talking about that on my channel not too long ago about me taking a little break because I need it. If I can't taking a break from social media, and I took a break from my job. Most definitely, I'm with you, Regina. I was at a point in my career, maybe earlier in my career. You got to go to the job. We come from the same era, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you go to the job, you don't take time off, or you know, you don't use mental health days and all that sort of stuff. He's like, what's that? You're supposed to go to work.
Right. And see, that's how we were raised. Our Generation X, you better work hard. That shows integrity. That shows tenacity. How we're built.
Yes, but more recently, Regina, let me tell you, I'm taking off that. I heard one of my I got together with some of my college friends. We get together once a year around Christmas time on Zoom because we all over. And one of my good friends said, she said, I done took off that cape and exchanged it for a blanket.
I like it.
I love it. If you're listening, AC, yes, I am talking about you. I love it. I have adopted that. Taking off my cape for a blanket. I like that.
I know that's right.
And speaking of which, I was blessed to be gifted with a early Christmas gift, a book called "Rest is Resistance,"
Okay.
and by Tricia Hersey.
Rest
I
is
was gifted "Rest is Resistance," a manifesto, and I was gifted an audiobook of it. And baby, when I listened to that, I was like, okay, change my perspective. I can't, like you mentioned about that cake. I'm like, I can't run myself ragged like you. I have people in my family who depend on me. I have a husband.
right.
I have family members who and friends who I would love to hang out with more than I would, working that for sure, right?
Right.
And so taking that time for myself and like you mentioned, doing things for myself. And I love to craft. Um, I was just sharing with somebody. It's just one of those things that I love to do. Like a little kid before Christmas when they want to stay up until they or Christmas Day, they just want to stay up, and
Mm,
not go to sleep, depending on what they're doing. I'm like that with crafting.
yes. That-
I could sit there and craft all day until I just fall asleep in the midst of all of it.
that- That's really good creative energy to create
Ex-
something that
yes.
you make with your hands. So I like that you do that.
If I could do that all day, every day, it would just be a bonus. So that's my self-care, doing things that I enjoy crafting and learning. Oh, I love to learn. I love taking classes just for the sheer knowledge. I might not do nothing with it,
Right.
but but I might be able to share the information with somebody else, you
Right.
know? So I don't mind doing that. Um, my family called me a professional student.
I think I love learning too. So I'm right there with you.
Oh, I don't feel so bad. Thank you.
Hmm.
Oh, let's see. We already talked about like the types of services and stuff, um, and the changes. So you mentioned about the supportive services. Just switching back gears to talking about what we do. Have you seen like a change over the years, or has it always, as far as you've been working where you are, the same?
And what aspect, like the change with?
Like types of services supports that the communities need, rather, I should say. Like the people that you serve,
Hmm.
have you seen like the needs change or the type of support that new types of supports that they may need compared to when you first started?
Yes, I am. Let's see. We used to have the changes with the transportation change drastically because I was working with a population of people who receive Medicaid, and
Okay.
Medicaid would pay for transportation. So we
Okay.
had a whole lot of contractors that were providing assistance with transportation, and Medicaid would reimburse them.
Oh.
But the funding got cut, and they were not able to pay those contractors, and they went out of business.
Ooh.
and so the people were not able to get to their doctor's appointments. So
Lord.
that transportation is like a real big need.
Right.
Hmm.
Hmm. It's funny that you mentioned that because yes, we too offered transportation. Now they sort of contract it out. We refer customers who have Medicaid. They do need the Medicaid piece of it. Um, to a company that offers it to our Medicaid clients. But at one time, we were in the business of helping them with the transportation. But you're right, they got out of it, and we refer to um, a company who does it, and you do need to have Medicaid. Can you pay out of pocket if you don't have it? Yeah. Is it expensive? Absolutely.
Oh yes, it's so expensive.
I mean, the one time I can say, let me back up, maybe more than one time where I have actually called on a customer's behalf or someone who didn't have um, transportation, and we're talking about $75.
Hmm.
And somebody might say, well, $75 is not a lot. It is for one doctor's appointment. If you
Yes,
have a
it is.
copay, you got prescription drugs and all that other sort of stuff. $75 to get to a doctor's appointment, that's expensive.
It is, especially if you're on a fixed income.
Right.
That adds up, and a lot of people they can't do it.
Yes. You think about what $75 will do for you. That could be your groceries for the week or two. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And you're having to choose, do you go to the doctor? Do you not go to the doctor? With your health concerns. So yeah, that was definitely a change in 2012 here. Um, they changed with the cash assistance for children under um the limited time cash assistance of 48 months. So um it it forced some families to perhaps rethink about this as a resource.
Yeah.
As far as cash assistance, some people argue that could be good or bad, and but it definitely a change. Just trying to think of some other major changes that we've been going through. Now, do you have like individual caseloads, or is it everybody service all the cases?
We have different caseloads. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. We do too, and right now we're sort of transitioning to what we call universal caseloads.
Oh wow.
Not all of the state has it, parts of it do, and where, you'll be served by pretty much anyone who could service your case in whatever area that you are in. So not
Mhm.
necessarily being assigned a case worker.
Oh.
Um,
Oh.
th- that could, potentially be good or bad depending on how people respond to it. Me personally, I feel like you should be able to be served by anybody just in case that caseworker is not available,
Mhm.
and then somebody's going to need to step in anyway.
Right.
And when you call, you should be able to get somebody who can serve you at that time. But of course, with the new system that we have, the wait times can be long. What they call in the queue,
Yeah.
you could be in the queue for a long period of time, but the idea is to be able to assist you when you call. So there's a six in one hand, half a dozen in the other.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, let's see. As we wrap up here, hmm, how would you say that you balance between how you advocate for systematic change, if you have the opportunity, and provide immediate support to the families that you serve?
Well, cause see, I work with a lot of people with lead poisoning and just
Mm,
trying to provide education. And
yeah.
one thing that I see that I try to advocate for is we have a lot of Hispanics and they don't speak the language, and a lot of
Mm,
our literature was in English, so I made it made sure that they get literature that was for them to understand it in their language. So
Okay.
that was one of the things, and just trying to advocate that they have
Mhm.
someone that speaks Spanish to go out with us because we have a language line.
Mhm.
But I think it's more interpersonable when it's when you can see the person face to face as opposed to talking through that phone.
Right.
And also Spanish, they have different dialects.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I just think it's better for a Spanish interpreter to go out with us when we're providing services for people that's Spanish or Hispanic. So
Wow. I think we
mhm.
probably talk about something similar. We have something called a language line. Is that what you call it? You have
Yes, a language line. Yes,
okay.
and
But you sound like you okay. Uh-huh.
sometimes I use my phone to look the Spanish Google translation,
Uh-huh.
and that is horrible.
Is it? Mm.
I just don't like the way it is when you're inside someone's home
Mhm.
and you're trying to speak through that Google's Spanish translation. It's just very awkward, and it just it's not a natural feeling. And you're
Oh.
waiting, and yeah.
Oh wow. Never even thought about that, but that's interesting. Okay. Hmm. Because I was thinking more or less on the phone, but you're right. If you're going doing home calls and you need, translation, how do you do it? And but it sounded like you don't have anybody to go with you. You weren't saying that, were you?
No, I go alone. That's why I was saying that, like, I want them to have a Spanish interpreter to go out with us because I think it's just
Right,
personable.
right.
Hmm.
Huh. That would be ideal, right?
Yes.
I do notice that some of the job postings that they have for like the caseworkers, they would ask that they be bilingual in particular areas or what have you, just recognizing that need. Because most definitely, I can't imagine. I haven't had to do that. The language line is the most I've ever used, so I
Hmm.
can only imagine.
Yeah. It's just awkward to me.
I see. Oh
Hmm.
gosh.
Because when I pull up to somebody's home and I knock on the door, I'm like, interpreter, I'm here at the resident's home. Can you introduce me? And it's just, and so I'm holding the phone up and they're interpreting through the phone and I'm holding the phone at them. And it's just awkward. It's not natural.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
You're doing the best you can. Don't you pulling that you make trying to make it work, right?
Yes.
Said do what you got to do, and that's something we will do with social. Like, how can I make this? How can I make this happen?
Right.
I will say that is definitely one of our skills. Oh gosh, and that would be wonderful to have people to go out to do that.
Hmm.
Um,
And
no,
it makes
some of
the person more
huh?
comfortable. It just makes the person more comfortable speaking with
Mm,
somebody in person that speaks their language and understands their culture and
right,
mm,
absolutely makes a difference for sure. Um, Yeah, one of the things I try to do is to empower my customers as best I can
yeah.
with with the things that are already in place. Because if I can't change it, systematic, because it's a systemic thing, right?
Hmm.
Um, but on the other end, I try to do my best to empower our customers either through knowledge or through resources. If there's someplace that I can try and call and be a mediator between, what they call the power structure, so to speak, and them, because sometimes, let's be real, if you're not familiar with a thing, you don't know what questions to ask in order
Right.
to get the right answers.
Hmm.
And it can be intimidating.
Right.
So I try to give, them the language that they need. This is what you need to know. These are the questions you need to ask. And when you
Right.
call this number or this resources, ask them this question because this is important because dot 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 dot. So in
Yeah.
other words, empowering them so that they don't feel intimidated or if I have to be a mediator to help them resolve it because they don't have the language. Because be honest,
Hmm.
depending on who you're talking to, they get frustrated.
They do. You have to give them the words to say. Empower
Yeah.
them with words.
Yes.
Mhm.
And sometimes the places they're trying to call, if you don't say the right words, they, can be dismissive.
Right. And I don't like when people do that because most of the time they just don't want to do their job, to be honest.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like they're counting on the people not to know what to say. So they can just, go ahead and deny them or dismiss them because that's just
Yeah,
the kind of world we live in. But I
yes.
like what you say and giving them the words to say so they can be able to access the services that they need.
And understand. And I don't gatekeep. So if there's something I know, I'm gonna tell you.
Right. Me too. That's that social work part.
Yes. If
Mm.
there's something in this policies and procedures that you need to know that they're not gonna readily tell you and just wait for it to happen to you, I'm gonna tell you.
Right.
Cause it don't make no sense to, have somebody's, head bump up against the wall if you don't have to.
Right.
It don't take nothing away from you to empower them and give them the tools they need to succeed and thrive. Because guess what? That's your neighbor.
Mm.
That's the person living in your community. That's the person working at wherever that you're going to be in. We don't live in a bubble, okay?
Right. I always used to tell my clients when I used to work with was called Medicaid waiver. We used to provide assistance in the home to prevent people from going into the nursing home. So they would come
Okay.
um, provide baths and food. And so if something went on, I always told them you can always file a grievance. And
Mm,
I always used to give them a number to call.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Oh, I'm so glad you just said that. I was talking to somebody
I
today.
take it. What you
Mm-hmm. So I was sharing that I was talking to somebody today just about that very same thing that you mentioned. They were trying they were called a community partner, so they were trying to help their neighbors or what have you navigate applying for Medicaid, right? Or
hmm
getting their Medicaid straight. And she said, "Well, what do I do if this, that, and thus happen?" I said, "You know what? You always have a right to a hearing, okay? If you're not getting the answers that you need, take it to a higher power, you know, and try to get it resolved or at least get the answers that you need so that you understand about the policies and procedures.
Right.
Because again, some of our staff aren't necessarily readily telling our customers what it is, the game that they're playing. So sometimes you have to find out the hard way.
hmm
Um, so it's no, shade to the staff by no means. If anybody hears that who knows where I work and who I work with, but honestly, if you do your best, you already know it. So I'm not stepping on your toes, right?
Right.
Um, yeah. So just sharing that with people so they can thrive, can
Yeah.
thrive. So this leads me to my our last topic. We shared about our career, how we got started, and what we do, and how we do self care, and all the things. What would you say to someone who may be listening to the first time about social work and they may be considering a career in it, or someone, we'll do a two part, a person who's considering a career in social work or someone who is seeking help to reach out to a social worker.
I would say if you are interested in becoming a social worker, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and make sure that you have a heart for people and not for the money. That make sure you have the compassion, do your research. Social workers can work in a lot of different areas. So you can work in the hospital, you can work in the community, you can work in the schools. There's just so many positions that social workers can work in. So make sure you do your research and just make sure that that's something you want to do. And for a person that's wanting assistance from a social worker, don't, because a lot of people think that social workers are going to take their child, put this stigma on social workers that we're going to report them. um so all social workers, we're not here to take your kids. We are here to help you with
Mm,
the resources in the community, or just to give you guidance. And the real social workers that works by the code of ethics, so we're going to
mhm.
do our job with professionalism and kindness. We're here to serve the community.
Right. Absolutely. I would be remiss, Regina, if the
Hmm.
social workers are mandatory reporters.
Yes, they are. That's true.
You know, um, but it when you're working, when you're going, we're talking about protective services. That's a whole nother podcast. Okay. I
Yeah.
don't work in that area. Maybe I'll try to find someone who does and who knows who could tell more about it. But no, you're right. Social workers, that's not their first intention when they're working with families. When they get up in the morning, let's see who kids I can take today. No,
Yeah. Because
that's
anytime I go out to somebody's home and I'm knocking out, because I have worked in protective services. So,
okay. Wonderful.
and, but now I'm not in that capacity anymore, thank God. But they, anytime I still go out and do the home visits, they think I'm coming to take their child. So, and I have to reassure them that's not what I'm trying to do. But yes,
Right.
I agree, Danny. We are mandatory reporters. So whatever you tell us, if it's something, we do have to report it. If
Yeah.
it's concerning child abuse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. People
Mhm.
might say, "Well, why is that?" That's because we're mandatory reporters. That could mean our license
Yep.
if we knew and we didn't say nothing. Bottom line. Just like social workers are mandatory reporters, there are other mandatory reporters in the community, other
Yeah.
professions. So
Doctor.
we're not the only ones.
Right.
So, but yeah, but by the time, and since you've worked in PS, by the time it gets to the point of taking someone's child, you have gone through some number of steps and hoops. So that's not the first course of action.
Right.
So just to point that out. Um, so what I would say for a person who's considering social work, like you, piggyback off of you, Regina, do it for the right reason, because you can get into compassion fatigue. You can get into that counter transferences we learned about, where you'll take on individual and or families' emotions and whatever they're going through, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it's all you can do is not to bring that home.
Right.
And so, you have to do that self check and that self monitoring for your own mental health. But just because you're a social worker, don't mean you have it all together. Okay.
Exactly.
And you can't social work yourself and you can't social work your family. So is what I say. And so doing it for the right reasons, doing that self care, if you need to have, and that's something when you get into the field of social work, having maybe a mentor or a supervisor that you can bounce ideas or feelings or emotions, what they call supervision. So it's an
Right.
opportunity for that. So you're not alone, in other words, when you're working with all those things, when it comes to dealing with families and individuals, you need some self-care, professional and personal. So there are resources out there for that. So I would definitely say lean into that and find a form of social work that you really passionate about, or it just simply may find you, right? Like it did me. Because
Yeah.
initially I didn't go to school like an undergrad for social work. So,
Mm-hmm.
but that's where I ended up. Um, and then for someone who's seeking help, I'll piggyback off what you said. Not the first, when people hear the word social worker, they assume that, oh, you mean PS? No, there are many types of social workers depending on the setting. And if you have a earnest social worker who will really try to help you where you are, you'll know, you know, aside if that's not the social worker for you, just like you may switch doctors, you possibly can switch social workers, you know. Um, but definitely try and seek out the services. If you have one who you've connected with, who, you trust in order to ask for particular guidance or help with something, then definitely do so. Because, like Regina said, we do have a code of ethics that we are to stand by. Okay, when we're working with people, and that's treating everyone with dignity and respect first and foremost. Treating people as and helping them where they are. That's another creed of ours. I don't know if it says exactly in that in our code of ethics, but meeting people where they are and working with them alongside them and not um I'll say it this way, not putting ourselves upon anybody you know
Right.
We- we're listening to them and seeing what their needs are and seeing how we can assist them either ourselves or seeking other resources if available. So um it's a if you have the opportunity, want to ask them specifically, if you're a social worker, there might be one by degree, but maybe not one by um, where they work. So knowing that as well, just to give you a key and heads up with that and what to expect um, from that particular person, because you might have higher expectations than what they can provide, depending on their job. I'm just keeping it real.
That,
keeping it Yeah, keeping it real. That's one of the things. I'm gonna close with this. That was one of the things that I did to help um, the customers in my communities. Actually, created a pamphlet um, where I was giving them 50 tips, and the 50 tips are more or less tips and myths, so to speak, about the particular positions and where I work, and the misnomers or the things that people or the public think that they know but don't know, and giving them the behind the scenes. Like there's a tip in there, for example, and I can put it in the description. Tip in there that these are not social workers, and here is their title, and here's a link to their title so you can actually see what they do, so that you have a better understanding and a level of, oh, okay, I'm thinking one thing and they can only provide that thing.
mm,
So that's sort of my way of advocating and giving back or what have you. So as we close, Miss Regina, you have any last words for our audience? It's been an absolute pleasure, dear.
I've had a great time talking with you, and I'm glad to be a part of the show and to talk about my experience as a social worker. And just make sure you all check me out on Regina Michelle on YouTube.
Yes, most definitely. Subscribe to her channel. Love watching all that she's doing, because even when you're a social worker, you found another outlet, which is absolutely wonderful.
Yes, I love my YouTube community.
Absolutely fabulous. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I thank you, audience, for being here today. If you like what we're talking about, if you know another social worker, if you want to hear more about this, if you want to chime into the conversation, most definitely leave a comment below and let us know. Share, like. Um, if you found the information useful, you like more of this content, you have any questions for Regina and myself, um, and we can see what we can do about getting to you. If there's a topic you would like to talk about, um, as another fellow social worker, let us know. Okay. As always, like I like to say on my channel, let us continue to learn, grow, and share together naturally. So until next time, beloveds, bye bye for now.